what you were saying was like sarcasm in the traditional sense is not super helpful in relationship. It can be cutting and it means like sarcophagus or something to cut down or cut away.
Yeah.
So I'll have you pick up from there.
Okay. Yeah. So sarcasm in the context of a relationship, when it gets used as a mode of humor, it's usually not uplifting and connecting. It
Mm.
can be, but in many cases, it's the shadow of the human being that is unrecognized, and that's why we say in every form of humor, there's an element of truth, even though it's like, oh man, I was just joshing with you, man. Oh, I was just being silly. Oh, I was just goofing off. And yeah, you were just goofing off, but there's an element of something that you didn't have the skills to bring in a real authentic way. And so you brought it a little bit as a jab. And the challenge there is because it didn't come in a direct, authentic communication to say, hey, this is a piece that I struggle with in my relationship with you. And then you can actually integrate your own shadow around it. The other person gets left with a little bit of your baggage. The corollary to that would be, hey, Mike, man, I need to share something about Jared with you. Um, I just don't like the guy. And you're like, oh, wow, I really like him. I thought he was a really good guy. No, let me tell you all the reasons why he's a jerk. And then at the end of the conversation, I say, but don't say anything to Jared about this. Well, now I'm doing violence to myself. I'm doing violence to you, and I'm doing violence to him because I'm giving you a perception about a human being that you don't share, you didn't have, but now you're saddled with it. If you agree to that
Mm.
ominous, hey, don't say anything to Jared. You know what I always say to individuals when they share that is I'm going to say every word of this to Jared, and I'm going to say it right now, and I'm going to get on the phone with him, or you're going to be the one that says it to him because this is going to be a three-way call if you'd like to join. What would you like to do? Because I'm not going to carry your baggage around Jared. That's not fair for any of us. That's not what we do. Sarcasm, in its own way, is that kind of third personing. It's like, oh, this joking part of me gets to say something to you, and you're not really sure, like, is he serious? Does he really think this about me? Am I lesser than in his eyes? Whereas self-deprecating humor is where I say a goofy thing about myself, and I can work on eating my own shadow around whatever that deprecatory, comment is. And the most beautiful kind of humor is just a kind of childlike, not childish, but childlike humor, where we're just innocent and silly and playful, and we laugh at the silliest things together. And we just lose ourselves in that incredible sense of joy and innocence together. The caveat I'll say to sarcasm is for those of you that are listening and from the East Coast and from places like Boston and New York and North Jersey and Philly, like Roxborough, Manayunk, where I went to middle school. There can be an actual kind of connection and love that's built out of that kind of sarcasm. But I do have to say it's rare because the love, the intention of that love has to be overwhelmingly clear in the relationship, such that you can say anything to that friend, and you do say anything to that friend. You have the tough conversations with that person. You share the non-shares. You go through the eye of the needle. You deal with all of that, and then that humor can actually just, I mean, and I'll tell you, this is me talking out of this experience with Jared, is we have straight conversations about our business relationship together, about our families, about our work with each other, and the ideas that we have, and so, for example, I wrote a sentence that, boy, I thought was really pretty erudite, pretty sophisticated. And he said, "What is this? Are you trying to like win the Pulitzer with this one?" You know? And I laughed. I couldn't stop laughing because he loves me so much. He's so connected with me, and I feel that love. And I also feel just complete honesty of like, Edmund, brother, take a look at what you're writing here. It's just drivel. Like it doesn't come across at all. It's off-putting at best, and it's nonsensical at worst, you know? And I'm just sitting there just going, right, Jared, you have an incredible capacity to carry sarcasm in a way that builds. And so if you do have that level of relationship with someone, then in that way, sarcasm is a gift.
And would you also say, like, if it is used, because this is super helpful for me, because again, I didn't grow up with sarcasm in my house, not really that I can recall. And so would it need to be also mutual in some regards? Like,
Yes.
because if
Yes.
it's, I don't want to say like both people have to be sarcastic, for example, but I would imagine there needs to be some agreement to where it feels good and it is super clear that it is that loving type of, razzing the other guy or whatnot. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. You know what the receiver has to have is a recognition that I don't take myself too seriously or nobody else will,
Mm,
right?
okay.
Or a feeling of like, don't be so humble. You're not that great. Right? It's this feeling of like, the light touch goes a long way. And to be, there's a psychological term, which is kind of a stupid term, but it's called ego syntonic. And so it's not letting yourself get carried away with yourself. And that ability to be real with another person in a sarcastic way that does convey an idea, but it comes on the wings of love. That builds the connection between the two. It actually lets me know I can trust Jared even more because I can trust him when things are going well, but I really get to know somebody when things aren't going well or when something I do would be helpful to shift in order for him to feel more integrity, more love, more connection in our relationship. And then when he does that on a consistent basis, and sarcasm is a part of that, I come to welcome it because I know that, I'll get leveled to the position that I need to be on. And so if the receiver has that capacity to be egocentric, to not take himself too seriously, and to recognize the truth of a statement, that there is something for me to work on. And I'm grateful that somebody cares enough about me to do it. And they're doing it in a humor-filled way. Jared doesn't always have to
Mm.
come to me and say, "Hey, Edmund, sit down here, young man. I need to, tell you something about this sentence you've written here in paragraph 4." It's, that could be a lot more painful than, "Hey, man, looks like you tried to win the Pulitzer."
Awesome. Well, thank you for breaking that down. That's super helpful, especially in relationship dynamics for sure. So thank you, brother.
Yeah, the relationship dynamics is if you're already in a situation with the other person, then often you've chosen somebody who is a mirror for you or who is the opposite of you. And if you've chosen that individual and you're trying to use sarcasm to teach the other person, ooh, that's ouch. I can already feel the sting there.
Mm.
If you're trying to use it to be right, ooh, that just got even heavier and worse. Um, and those are the tendencies that I have seen as a marriage and family therapist. Right in session, and the other person, you can just see the whole body tightens up, or they ejaculate with some kind of comment, and you start to know, okay,
Mhm.
guys, hang on just a second, let's slow down, let's quiet our voices down. People have to get deregulated at that point. They've got to come back into harmony, and we know when the neocortex goes offline, when it gets flooded with all those beautiful, juicy adrenaline chemicals, it can take 20 minutes before you're reasonable again. And it's better just to stop that conversation if sarcasm has occurred and the other person got jacked. When you're dysregulated,
Mhm.
please don't continue to try to have a normal, healthy conversation. It's not possible. And And so that's what sarcasm, I've seen sarcasm do when there's already a bit of tension or a need to be right or a need to be heard or not feeling seen. All of those things are already a deficit-based communication model. And then to throw sarcasm into there is lighting a fire on, it's pouring
Mhm.
gasoline on an already lit fire, actually.